go put yourself on a team, go put yourself around, okay, and they don't do it. No, I'll figure this out. I'm like, all right, sit back and struggle, dude. If you just go put yourself around the right people, I guarantee you'll be tripling your income probably within a year and a half if you just go to somebody that can point you in the right direction.
My dad would always have the 8-foot desk because real estate back then, dude, it was faxes and papers and shit everywhere.
Coincidentally, we're also the same generation that probably the highest majority that probably needs counseling that doesn't receive counseling.
Have conversations, and if you are not someone that is good at holding yourself accountable, the best thing you can do is put people around you that will hold you accountable.
All right, welcome to the Real Rehab experience. We're here with a good friend of mine, Blake Clark, successful real estate agent, mogul, and all kinds of things, right?
Yeah.
Dude, thanks for coming on. We just want to cut up and talk about some successes and some lessons learned and expectations.
And by thanks for coming on, we mean thanks for letting us pull up into your house and set up in your garage. So.
Oh yeah.
This was the first podcast under a lift?
First, ever. We're sitting.
This is like $1 million car studio.
Yeah, we're sitting underneath a $100,000 frame. Right?
I love it. Well, we were just having a conversation off camera about expectations and how you even got into the real estate business kind of without expectations.
Yep.
And I don't really care to talk much about real estate these days as much as expectations. Yep. And I love that. And I feel like we've had conversations even all day before we got here with some other people talking about expectations. Yep. Where do you fall? Like, do you set expectations? If you got into it without expectations, I mean.
Yeah, expectations are a very funny thing. I think they're absolutely essential for most agents. I think they set the wrong expectations, right? So it's kind of a weird thing, like what we were saying, Roland, prior to this was, I think the reason I did so good is because I didn't put any unrealistic expectations on myself. My expectations were actually super low for myself because I had zero desire to do this full time. Which is ironic because now I run a full service real estate brokerage and I'm one of the top 1% in the state in sales. But it's because I love the process, right? But like when I got into it, my personal expectation was I want to be a sponge and learn everything about this. And so the way I said was I'm going to use my year one as just a foundation. Let me learn what I can friggin' learn about this. Let me just learn to enjoy the process. I know the sales process because I have previous sales experience in other careers. I just don't really know much about real estate. So that was my goal, was like, if I could just sell one house and cover my dues. Other than that, I just want to learn as much as I can. So my expectation was to learn, which as default, I didn't put any pressure on myself. Because I didn't sell 10 houses my first year, I didn't look at myself like you're a loser because I didn't have that.
Do you feel like that's part of your hardwiring? Like when you get into something, are you someone who's like, I'm just all in this thing right now?
I'm in it to win it every time, but I set realistic So where I think a lot of people fall short of, and after coaching agent after agent, is their expectations are oftentimes too short. It's not that they're wrong, like they have high aspirations. I want to be nobody gets into any career field that I believe in is like, I'm going to be in it to be a failure. I'm going to go to
suck at this. I want to be the best sucker out there.
I want to be the worst person ever. Nobody thinks that, right? But what they don't tell themselves is, hey, this is going to take me a while. So like, one thing I learned is I can usually win by outlasting people. That's all there is to it, right? Like, I don't, like if I go to start a business or I set a lofty sales goal or whatever, like we're getting ready to start 2 more businesses right now. And we've done a project. I literally went into it and said, hey, I might lose money on the front end of this thing. It's going to take me a year and a half to recoup it. But you do the math over a 3-year period, and like we're going to J-hook that thing like crazy, where most people just don't want to accept that reality. And part of that's society, right? Like everything is instantaneous right freaking now, which I think I'm lucky to be in a generation that I had to wait for everything. Like the younger generation hasn't known anything but now, right? And so I see this literally when it comes to coaching. Like I'll have a new agent come to me and we're like, hey, we're going to teach you how to do this, right? The older ones like, yeah, I'm good. I got time. I got patience. They're a little more. We're like, I just had a conversation yesterday. One of my agents, she's amazing. She's one of the hungriest. She was in my office literally screaming at herself because she didn't hit X amount of transactions this year. And I'm like, who's told you were going to do that? You're actually doing great. She's doing phenomenal. Her expectation was just that she sees what I'm doing. She sees what other people are doing that are 10 or 15 years down the road. And she doesn't have the foresight to say, hey, they're further down the road.
How much of that in your coaching is a comparison game, right? With social media
it's horrible. It's horrible. Like here's the downside. Like we were having this conversation. I do a lot of self-reflecting about this, and it's a double-edged sword because people that come around me and I think other high producers, they get there because they're like, I want to be like that. But then they get there and they constantly compare themselves to somebody like me or a high producer, somebody who's been doing this. You're like, no, you don't understand. This is 10 years in the making to get here. What you need to do is frame your perspective and say, that's amazing that would be possible in 10 years. And as long as you're content, now hopefully it happens sooner than that. I'm going to teach you everything I learned, and I'm probably going to compress what took me 10 years. Most likely you can get here in like within 6 years, literally get here. But the problem is a lot of people, they start out, they get surrounded by people like us, and they almost get discouraged. I've seen this happen a lot. They're like, I'm not doing enough. You're doing this. I'm not. I'm like, no, you're doing great. Like, your expectation is too freaking, as much as I hate to say too high, I love ambition, but that's really why a lot of people fail. They set unrealistic expectations. I think that's a big part of it, 60, 70, 80% of the time. If you tell yourself, hey, you can be doing great, but if you tell yourself, hey, my first year I'm doing 20 transactions, you do 12, I'm a complete failure.
You snuck in a word in that, and you said content.
Yeah.
What do you feel like, how do you describe or encourage them to find contentment?
It's not a good word. Like, I don't like content. Content's a killer.
You don't like content?
I don't like content. Like, because content, as soon as you're content with anything, you're done growing, you're done, you're dead. You're never going to maintain. Like, I've truly believed that in business. Like, I've seen people that were doing great and they refused to learn, refused to want to go after more. And eventually everything around them, the market, everything kind of rolled around them and passed them by, right? Like, it's almost like you're on the freeway, you're in the middle of the road, you're in the fast lane going fast, but you stay that same speed and eventually everybody starts passing you up. And yeah, at one time, 6 years ago, you were content, but with technology coming out, the speed, people doing things more efficiently, right? People that are higher, it's like sports, right? Like what the guys were doing in the 50s, like, that's crazy. What guys are doing today, they're like monsters, right? There's always somebody that's going to set the bar. So as soon as you stay content, you might be cool now, but in 10 years, you're passed up by everybody that set their bar much further down the road than you.
Content, kind of like thinking about retirement. You talk to so many people like, I want to retire at 65 and do what?
Right.
Play golf, sit on the porch.
Yep.
But I guess the question is like contentment. Can you be content with all the things that you've achieved, but still working towards other things, not because you want more, but because that's what drives you?
Yeah, it's a balance for sure. I've been extremely unbalanced in that, where it's pretty much like what you said, right? It's really just finding joy in where you're at and being happy with progress. But I don't know, I've never met, and this is just me personally, I've never met anybody that is highly, highly successful that is just one day they build something absolutely incredible, they go hard their whole life, and then one day they're like, that's it, I'm done, I'm content, I'm never going to build it. I think it's literally like, you can outlast people for 10, 20 years doing something at a high level. It's pretty much embedded in who you are as an individual. Now, does that mean you might slow down? Maybe your sales goals, targets change, or your wants in life change, or maybe you've reached the pinnacle of financial success, but you're always going to be somebody that wants to build, create, do something more, be more, take on a challenge. Like, you'll never be that guy or gal, if you're listening to this, that's like, I did all these incredible things and I'm finally at 65 years old and ready to stop. I don't think that's even possible for somebody at that level.
Do you think people get to 65, they're like, I just don't want to do this shit anymore?
Yeah, but I think that they just shift that to doing different shit, because I know a lot of people that were 65 that are like, I'm done doing this shit. Like, I was just talking about this. I've got 3, close friends to me within the last 3 or 4 months that have done multi-million-dollar exits. Like, it's been super inspiring for me to see that, because it just unlocks. It's like when you think you're doing good and then you get around somebody like that and you're like,
okay, but are you doing the same thing that the agents do? You're like, I can do more. Like,
I've gotten smarter about this, right? I used to be that guy. I think it's natural. I used to get envious, jealous of people that were doing to me, frustrated. Especially being a competitor, you always want to be number one, right? And that served me, I think, probably my first 5 years. Like, I was a powerhouse. Like, I put my head down, I outworked everybody, I carried a chip on my shoulder. But what I found was there's only so many hours in a freaking day that you can work, right? And so I reached a point where I was almost becoming counterproductive, right? It's like, okay, I'm working so much that my productivity is actually starting to go down a little bit because I'm burning myself out, that I'm not leveraging my resources properly. And then what I found was I used to enjoy being the guy that had the coolest cars, all the big stuff, you know what I mean? And my friends would come over and like, yeah, you're at the top. And it's not really all that inspiring. It's cool for like a year. And then you go hang out with friends that are doing more than you, and I'd be at a dinner table with them, and I'd leave a conversation and my brain would just be like, holy crap. Like, that was extremely refreshing, right? Because I would get bored out of my mind, where I go hang out with friends and like, yeah, let's just go watch football all Sunday. Let's go do this. And I'm like, but I'm thinking about this, and I'm thinking about growth, and I'm thinking about business, or I'm thinking about that next goal. And I would leave not really feeling full in that conversation. And then I'd go hang out with a guy that's doing like 3 times as much as me, and I'd just be like a sponge, like, how'd you do this? Where are you learning? Like, teach me. And then I go home, I'm like, oh man, that's friggin' incredible.
That's good. All right, so unpack that for me a little bit, right? Yeah. So how do you separate out the difference between comparing and competing? Because competing, you're ideally, like, you want to compete against yourself to be the best version of yourself, not based off of somebody else's track record.
It's a maturity thing. That's all I can tell you. Like, I don't know if there's a right or wrong answer. Like, I think everybody's got to go through these phases. Like, if you would have told me 15 years ago, don't compare yourself to other people, I wouldn't have listened to you. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And I would have, I mean, a lot of people tell me that. I've been hearing that since we've been kids. Don't compare. Comparison's the thief of joy. You don't understand that, right? Until you, at one point, it's almost like this teeter-totter, like you're climbing it, you're like trying to stack the weight on your end and stack the chips and make a bunch of money and do your stuff. And then you just realize you're like, there's always somebody out there that's bigger than you. There's always somebody more than you, right? So then you hit the other side of the scale where you're like, wait a minute, if I hang out with these people that are doing way more than me like that, because that's how I get to the next level, right? I get here and I'm like, oh, I'm doing great. And then I go hang out with him. I'm like, holy shit, like this guy's making way more and he's way more efficient and he's loving life a little bit more and he's more balanced. Well, let me go figure that out, right? And then there's a next level and then there's a next level. And so for me, I just learned like the ultimate hack for me, it was a maturity thing for me. I was about 5 years in the business. I started in 2015 and then in 2018, 2019, 2020, I started to figure out, instead of me taking 3 years to learn this on my own, why don't I just go to the damn guy or girl who is doing this at a high friggin' level and just ask them, set the ego aside. And they all to this point have welcomed me with warm arms. Yeah, pull up a seat, let me teach you, let's do this. And I literally compressed my growth like tenfold, you know what I mean? One of my buddies taught me how to start a team, right? I got smart. I was like, I'm gonna figure out how to do this real estate thing on my own. It took me 3 years I didn't even have a transaction coordinator for 3 years. I was turning my paperwork in so late, my broker, I was on a flat fee brokerage, $250 a file. I was averaging $2,000 a file because of all the late fees because I didn't do paperwork. Because I hated paperwork. And then and he didn't even have a transaction coordinator. There was no team, so I didn't know what I didn't know. And then I finally got smart and I went and asked one of my buddies, I'm like, dude, you're managing like 60 people. Like, how are you doing this? He's like, oh, come on in, sit down. Go hire a TC. I'm like, what's a TC? He's like, transaction coordinator. I'm like, what's that? He's like, they do your paperwork. I'm like, there's people that do your paperwork? I was like, how much do they cost? He's like, only $300 a file. I'm like, fuck, I'm paying $2,000 a file. I'm getting all my stuff late right now. And so, like, that conversation, he's like, leave, go hire a TC, change my world. I never touched paperwork again in my life. Like, I'm like, holy crap.
So has your whole journey just been like that? You just find the next person?
That was like the turning point for me where I was like, I had to set the ego aside and say, hey, I need help. Can you help me? And he helped me. And then that took my income from like here to here, bought my time back, helped me scale. And I was like, wow, like it took me 3 years to get here. It took me 3 months to get here because he within like 2 days sat me down and taught me how to do this. You know what I mean? And I was like, okay, that's the hack. So I did that for 4 more years, ran a really successful team. And then in 2020, I decided to start a brokerage. And I was like, I learned my lesson. Let's do this again. I went to our buddy, Brian North, and I was like, dude, I'll pay you. I love what you have going on. You have a setup that I kind of want, not exactly, but like if I had to model it, like you're the guy that built it the way I want, and I trust you. Can you teach me? He's like, absolutely, come on in. Sat down, he's like, do this, don't do this. And then our first year as a brokerage, we were highly profitable. Like year over year, we scaled. And I learned more by him telling me, don't do this. I made all these mistakes in
negative clarity.
Don't do this. And so now I just know better, right? Now I've got buddies that are doing multiple, $1 million exits. Hey, teach me. What am I? Yeah, this is what you look at. This is kind of business. Like, it's just such a different level of game that you'll always win more by going to people that are doing more. Always. Where, again, go back 15 years ago, I was the guy that's like, I'm not asking anybody for help. I have got so much ego, I'll figure this out on my own. And I see it because I see myself in people. Like I see new agents come out and they just struggle. I'm struggling. I'm like, go put yourself on a team. Go put yourself around. Okay, and they don't do it. No, I'll figure this out. I'm like, all right, sit back and struggle, dude. If you just put yourself around the right people, I guarantee you'll be tripling your income probably within a year and a half if you just go to somebody that can point you in the right direction.
What was the worst disappointment you had in somebody that you thought was successful, their life was together until you really got to know them, and then you're like, I don't want that?
All the online fake bullshit.
We just had that conversation in the driveway.
I'm not going to name a person right now.
I already know who you're talking about.
But there's somebody that's like a huge online influencer, and somebody I thought I wouldn't say like looked up, but I admired the business model. I was like, oh, that guy's killing on scale. After peeling the layers back and stuff, I had made a deal with the individual, and it was my fault. Like I set it up. I'm not going to say it was my fault. I set it up this way. This is how it played out. But let's just say it was a multi-million-dollar property, and he's like, I'll pay you to sell this. And I said, I'll cut you a deal better. I'll do this deal for $5,000, multi-million-dollar home. I'll list it, sell it, $5,000. That'll cover my photos, my PPC campaigns, my marketing, my ads, all my video work, everything. I'll break dead even on it. So you could either pay me, my 2.5% on it, or I'll do it for $5,000. All I ask is you get me in a room with somebody that I can learn something from. I don't need a penny from you over that. I just want to be connected with somebody. Yep. He's like, yeah, done, no problem. Boom, sold a house, set a record with it. Haven't heard from the fucking dude again. 5Gs. And this is somebody that is extremely well known online in the real estate world. I'm not going to name their name, but that was a great example of like a disappointment. I'm like, man, like you want to see good in somebody, and it's not even like a money thing. It's like you just didn't hold up to your end of the fucking word, and that pissed me off. And that happens a lot. There's a lot of people right now. And then as I got into the broker world, I can see everybody's numbers. I can see sales. I can see stats. You start to get smarter. You're like, it's not all about volume. There's a way to run a business where you can be profitable. I know people that sell twice as much volume as me, but I'm twice as profitable as they are because the way we run it. So you start to learn, and then you really start to peel back the layers, and you're like, wait a minute, you're not doing half the shit you say you are. You're not a success. You're not making the money you make. You're faking online left and right all day. And so that's probably like been the most disappointing in this business and real estate. It's so much smoke and mirrors out there.
Yeah. What about working with people in your, like, how big's your team?
Well, my personal team's small. I got 5, but our brokerage as a whole, we got 63 people.
All right. So I assume you interact with a good chunk of those people, right? And they all fund under you. And so I think over the years, like I've definitely learned working with people is just messy.
Yep.
What have been some of the toughest lessons you've had to learn while trying to lead a large group of people?
Culture gets diluted. It's really hard. When I had a team of 5 and 10 people, it was extremely easy, tight-knit. When I went to start my brokerage, my team that was tight-knit that we were pretty close with, a lot of that started to unravel and fall apart just because as we started introducing new personalities, more people, they're like, oh, like, dude, you're there for us. You're like, you're our team lead. You can't be helping people. And I'm like, no, this is phase 2 for me now. Like, I did the team thing. I did it for 4 years at a high level. I'm personally trying to develop and grow. So this is a new challenge for me. And there's a huge thing in that. There's a lot of contention. And then, so that was challenging and tough. It was the ugly side of people that I wish, because it's like, I look at them and I'm like, I want you to grow. I want you to do it. And that was almost you start to see sides of people. They're like, but I don't want you to grow because you growing doesn't serve me, which it does in some ways. But that was pretty challenging for some. A lot of agents, I mean, it just is what it is. A lot of people are after themselves. There's people that we've helped. There's people that we got fucking sued for that left a day later. And we, that we've defended. It's just, so you have to try really hard not to be calloused. So Brian had told me something that oftentimes people leave to better their situation. So I always try to keep that in the back of my mind, whether they understand it. I think they're making the right choice or not. But unfortunately, it's just, I operate from a place of, I don't know, like it's such a small business and there's people that I care about that are like really good friends of mine. And I always try to do like the right thing. Like I don't go poach people from people I know and I just don't do that kind of stuff because it's so much business to go around, right?
Yep.
Where I see a very opposite, ugly side of that in this business a lot, which is something that's always drove me nuts. If I had to say disappointment-wise. So.
I think that's something that, over the last couple of years that I've learned in the business is just finding people like you and I have become close. There's just an equal exchange of energy. There's no judgment, all the things, right? But we like to talk about cars and building people and where are we going and how do we improve? And I was telling Jason earlier today, I said, after all the shit I went through last year, like Blake invited me, and I remember you were one of my first calls when I got out of rehab, and I'm like, dude, this is where I'm at. And then you were talking about your friend that just passed away from it, and you invited me to that lunch, and I remember sitting down and going, I know Brian, I know Blake, I don't know Carl, but I don't have time for bullshit anymore. Like I want real friends that'll call me on my shit, and like have that close relationship, even though you guys all own brokerages. I don't. I'm building something different, right? I look at you guys, I'm like, yeah, you guys are nuts.
Every lunch, he's like, I'm really glad I'm with you guys.
Right. You're like, I got 68. Brian's going through his stuff. Yeah. Carl's going through his, and I'm over here going, well, I got this messy house over here I can't get rid of. So, but what I've learned is just finding those genuine relationships where it's an equal exchange of energy, and I get to learn from you, and you've called me, and we've learned from each other.
Oh yeah.
And it's just not something that's the norm. Like if you think back when we got into the business, it was always, I don't want anybody to succeed from what I'm doing.
100%.
And now that's different. So talk a little bit about that. Like with your success, what's that change as far as your role in impacting people's lives?
Yeah, I've just been really lucky. Like people have helped me along the way. Like a lot of friends, like, dude, you've helped me. Like I remember I called you when we started becoming friends, you know, even prior to you going to rehab and stuff like that. And I was like, dude, teach me how to fucking buy these houses on owner carry. What are you talking about? And you're like, yeah, this is all you do this and this. And I went out and bought 3 houses like that. Like, I'm like, all right, back to my point of like, this guy's good at, let me just call him an ad. Like it's so crazy how much we get in our own heads, because I remember I spent so long trying to be the best and like proving it, doing it on my own. And, you know, just your typical 20-year-old dude that has to figure shit that we all go through. That's why I said it's a maturity phase. I don't know if there's an answer where it's like, they just have to go through that, you know, and some people figure it out quick. Some people have been doing this shit 30 years and they still haven't figured it out. But it's been the biggest hack for me. And, you know, to what you said too, you know, that's the thing, is just having like, I've just found that like I've progressed so much further and made, like if I had to look at my last, I'm going to be 40 next year, but these last like 5 years for me have been such rapid growth by having such a open mindset to just working with people. It's been crazy. You know what I mean? Like, dude, like I go up in an airplane and I fly and I look out the window and I just look at like hundreds of thousands of houses, and I'm like, I couldn't even possibly sell all these if I wanted to.
Right?
Like this is the crazy thoughts that go through my head on an airplane. I'm looking out and I'm like, I'd be happy if I sell 1 or 2 here and there. Like I just need my 4 or 5 a month and I'm good. Like that feeds my family. I'm happy. And like there's so much room out there for all of us, and we all bring so much different value, dude. Like what I do to what you do, we are like polar opposites. Like you're out, you know, like I'm doing a lot of the luxury at volume. You're like, I'm doing the rehab stuff at volume and investments at volume, like both successful in our own friggin' ways. And it's like, but we both help each other in so many ways. And that's just like, there's no ego in a lot of that, right? And that's the biggest thing. If I had to say what slowed me down, has been ego. I still have it in some ways. I still like to compete. I still like to be number one, you know, as a whole, but more of number one is like coaching my agents. It's just my field goal has shifted so much, and it's been really cool to just bring people along on the journey. I made a post the other day. It's like, I walked in my office and I got this plaque of like all these trophies, and I remember that's all I fucking cared about. It was the craziest thing. 3rd year in the business, like I didn't give a shit if I made a fucking dollar. I was like, as long as I got trophies on my wall, that's all I care about. Because that was like, because those trophies equated to, I'm number one. I have the trophy to show it. Like I got this, you didn't get this. You know what I mean? It was the craziest thing. And then I was standing there and I was like laughing because the last one I have is from 2022, and I didn't show up to anything because I just don't fucking care. I was like, you know what became a focus on me was like developing more agents, like helping them be successful, looking at their KPIs, like what's our average agent to deal ratio, what's their average income. Like once I shifted my focus on helping all those people while still doing my own thing over here, my business like quadrupled. Opportunities started like pouring in left and right. Connections no longer went from like you're a competition to like, dude, what can I take from you and learn, and what can I give back, and let's both just blow up.
What do you attribute, like, there's all this success, but anybody that's been successful has failed more than once.
All the time. Yeah.
So what are some of your rehab moments, like, where you've had to tear shit down and freaking rebuild?
Dude, yeah. Dude, e-com. Fucking got my ass kicked with that. We got raided by the feds. That was a good time.
I love this story. Tell that story, man, because this is fun.
Yeah, we had an emblem business. I was doing this little side business I had started before I was even in real estate, and yeah, we got hit on copyright infringement, and it wasn't even from the friggin' brand owner. I was literally making them for the brand owner in the state of Arizona. It was like, hey, this is copyright infringement. You got a trademarked word on this, and turned into a 3-year legal court battle, hundreds of thousands of fucking dollars and shit.
Dude, I remember the calls being on the phone with Blake. He's like, I might lose my real estate license because of this emblem thing.
I was ready to.
You know, when you first meet, which is our story's kind of interesting, right? Because When you go back to it, we're on complete opposite sides of town.
Yep.
We both have this one word in common, which I'm like, who's this guy like Limitless Brokerage? Like I had already had the tattoo.
Yeah, you DM me that.
Right?
I'm like, who the fuck is this guy?
So this is our
ours
first
is a
encounter.
Limitless tattoo?
So I'm like, freaking, this dude seems kind of cool, some old cars, some things. Well, we end up, somebody does this awesome event, which I still think we should do because I think it would be really cool with some of the people that we know.
Yeah.
It's called the Hidden Boardroom. And we all got this weird black box on our desk that was like, you've been invited to the Hidden Boardroom, which was like entrepreneur monopoly. And you're like, huh, all right, I'm in. $1,500. Who do I meet at this table? Complete surprise.
Yep.
We show up and it's Blake, who I'd always wanted to meet, and Elliot and Mike Ayala, and we got shit-faced and played Monopoly for 5 hours.
Yeah,
all on video.
Game. That was a long game.
It was a long game, but it was.
I won though.
You did win. I think the funniest video though is when I was trying to get Mike to buy that get out of jail free card.
He's like, it's
he was on
$200 here.
Bottle 2, I think, of one. I'm like, dude, just buy this for $100. He's like, it's only $50 to get out of jail. I'm like, yeah, but this one's $100. But that was how we met, and then it was just kind of off to the races after that.
Yeah.
I came out and spoke on some creative stuff at his office, and we've done some events together. It's just kind of that one word, and the funnier story is like, I don't ever get calls from his wife, who's their designated broker at Limitless, but I remember getting a call. It was by the pool, and it's Michaela, and I'm like, I don't like it when Michaela calls, because usually there's a problem. So I get a call, like, what's up, dude? Michaela calls, you're like, is she calling about an agent? Am I in trouble? Well, it turns out we both have the same attorney, and they were sending out all these cease and desists to all these people using the word limitless.
Yep.
And Michaela called just to make sure that she didn't have any of mine in there. And then after she hung up, I got a call from we both share the same attorney. He's like, I've got these things going on. I'm like, I already talked to Michaela. We're good. You can scratch that off your list.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, so like, that was a tough one, man. That was I learned a lot in that for sure. You know, definitely, ended up shutting. We ran e-com successfully after that for like 3 years, but I just got burned out with it after a while. Went all in on real estate, started a brokerage. That was like pretty damn challenging. That was it's just a different game. Like brokerage world's not profitable, right? So it's almost like you're doing it for a nonprofit.
Yeah.
That's what I like to tell everybody.
That's why I got out of the brokerage business, right? We own the franchise.
People think like, oh, you make all this money. No, dude, you make 16 cap on an agent. Yeah, dude, like by the time you spend all the money and you pay for the stuff and the CRMs and the attorneys you have to have on, like all this stuff, like I could literally shut it down and go sell 2 houses on my own and net the same amount of money and not deal. Like, you see what I'm saying? So a lot of people, but like it's been such a fulfilling thing for me though, because the amount of agents that have been able to make a living off of it and true professionals and stuff like that. So it's just been all kinds of little moments like that for me.
You had another moment that you shared with me, you know, when University of Phoenix really fucked with you when you were kind of in your sales, and that was kind of when your corporate job.
Corporate, yeah. That was a tough thing.
Did you have kids at that point?
I did.
Yeah.
Two.
So talk about that, because I think that was kind of a scary moment in life.
I came from like super blue collar. Was doing like construction, underground utilities, dirt work, and I knew this girl. I was like picking melons in the field, and then I was driving a tractor one day. I remember down the Beeline Highway going to Fountain Hills. I was on this friggin' tractor. It's July, like 100 and some degrees out. I'm digging all the fiber optic line for Cox Communications. We got contracted. So I'm on the side of this highway. I'd been digging this damn thing for like 2 months, like on a backhoe, going down the whole trench. She calls me up. She's like, hey, I went to high school. She's like, you're looking for a job. We're trying to hire people. And I was like, doing what? She's like, sales. I was like, I don't know shit about sales. Like, I've sold stuff on like eBay and stuff. That was it, you know, like back in the day, Craigslist, whatever. And she's like, yeah. And I was like, well, is it inside? She's like, yeah. I was like, air conditioning? She's like, yeah. I was like, you got to do? She's like, just talk on the phone. You sell college to people. And I'm like, I don't know anything about it. My dad was like, just go do it, dude. Like, get out. My dad was trying to get me out of like the blue collar stuff, you know, because he had lived his whole life doing that. And so I gave it a shot, and I was like, this is the easiest freaking job ever. I can sit in here, I get a lunch break, and I'm in air conditioning, and all I gotta do is make phone calls to people. I was raking like 120 calls. They thought I was like an anomaly, because people that start in like corporate world, that's just you know, they all hang around the water cooler and drink water. I'm like, this is amazing. Like I was making $11 an hour in friggin' 120 degree heat. I was picking melons before, like all that, and I'm like, you get to sit in air conditioning. I get to go to college for free. I get 38 grand. And
all you want me to do is call people.
All I have to do is call and talk to people. I was like, this is crazy good. And I was dialing like crazy. And this was my introduction to like sales. Like they had what was called a performance metrics, which is every month you had to make X amount of sales. And based on those sales over a 6-month window, you can get up to a 20% raise. So you can get a compounding 40% raise year over year. And I didn't really understand that. And so my first 6 months,
your math skills were a little fuzzy back then?
My manager calls me in. He's like, congratulations, you're getting 20%. I'm like, for what? And he's like, oh, you maxed out the metrics. This is crazy. Nobody does this. I'm like, I don't know. He's like, how'd you do it? I was like, oh, I call people. What you guys told me to do, make phone calls, talk to people. And looking back, it's just so easy. I'm like, this is crazy. Like anybody would think this is a bad job because again, what I was doing, that sucked. And this was like double. So I got bumped to that. 2 months into my first review, they're like, hey, we're going to have you be a manager. We're going to have you. I'm like, I don't know anything about managing people. I think at that time I was like 23 years old. There was a team that was like a bottom performer. This lady was like, she was a sweet lady. She just wasn't like a manager. She was like, let's hang out and do some yoga today, and didn't pay attention to the numbers or anything like that. So they fired her and they throw me on her team. Now I'm 23. I'm 100% money motivated. I'm like, this is the easiest job ever. And they're like, have at it. And so I went in there and she had a team of 12 and I fired 6 the first week. And because they gave me like pushback, they're like, no. I'm like, get on the phone and call. Do you want to be digging ditches for 11 an hour? And they didn't like it. They fired them. And so then I hired a bunch of other dudes out there working tractors. I'm like, dude, you want a job? Like, I can get you off the tractor. You can come do this. I brought them in and we killed it. And within a year, I was one of the top regional sales managers. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm making a lot of money. I'm still horrible with people. I'm like, you either perform or you're fired. Perform or you're fired. You don't like money, you're fired. What do you mean you want a vacation? You're fired. Like,
I have a job for you. It's digging ditches.
Yeah, but management's like round of applause, awards, and I'm like, yeah. And then they did that to me like 3 times over a 4-year period. I'd get a good team. And then I became known as like the turnover guy, like
the fixer.
Yeah, the fixer, right? So I was making great money. But then this one lady, it was crazy. I still remember this conversation. She's an older lady. She'd been at this company for like 20 years, right? And she was on my chopping block because she wasn't like working fast enough. And I remember I called her in a one-on-one. And she goes,
fired your mom, dude.
Yeah. She's like, can I tell you something? I was what? She's like, not everybody cares about money. And I like looked at her. She meant so serious in her face. I remember she like literally like had it with such conviction. And I was like, well, what do you care about? She's like, I just care about making sure I'm doing a good job and if I can get a vacation with my kids. And I was like, I don't know why I went home that day and I thought about it and I was like, okay. So then the next day I went back and I was like, what if I gave you 2 extra days of vacation if you hit your, dude, the lady like turned around, she's like, really? And I was like, yeah. And I started giving her like recognition, kudos every day. Her performance went up like 40%. Like it was crazy. And so I was like, at that moment I learned, I'm like, okay, everybody's motivated by different things.
Yes.
Like some people are money, some people are this, some people just want the fucking trophy, which was me after a while, And so you start to have to figure out like what pulls your levers, like what is it? So I got really good at that. And then something came in, like we were basically, the way that this happened was we'd enroll people in school and it was with Title IV funding. Obama comes into the office, they make some changes in Department of Education, and they basically say no more, you can't incentivize your enrollment advisors based on student loans anymore. So you take an entire company that was a sales company that was paid on performance metrics, and they said, no more, your metrics, gone. And we were like, how do we hold people accountable? And they're like, we don't know. It's a new government policy, but don't hold anybody, like you can't talk numbers anymore. This is a big no-no, yeah.
Not that far yet.
So you have a whole sales company. You got people that are making 6 figures that are averaging 5 to 8 sales a month, right? Like this is how this machine's going. And then all of a sudden management can no longer even hold you accountable to numbers. So by default, what happens? They're like, oh, so then, 2 or 3 months go on, sales really start tanking off, falling off. Then we become top end heavy because you have these high end salaries we're still paying, but we can't hold them accountable to the sales. And I still remember it, man. It was like 2009, right? They called me I'd been 3 years with the company, and they called me in right before Thanksgiving. HR was like, we need you to lay off these 500 people. I'm 25, 26 years old at that time. And that was probably the hardest thing I ever do. Like right before the holidays, I'd look at a room of 500 people. I'm like, you guys all got to go. And some of them were great. Like they were still good people, still performing, but because they were a number, like their salary was this, and HR was looking at this company of 10,000 people and like, let's just shave the weight by division. And so that happened 2 rounds. I had to do that. And then to keep morale high one day, I was still, mind you, our team was still the 3rd highest producing team out of 10,000 employees there. I'm still motivating them, keeping them going, doing what I do. And they said, one day I put a post out, I was like, or an email to my team, started my morning off. I was like, hey guys, whoever makes the most outbound calls, customer service time combined, lunch is on me today. Hour later, HR calls me in and fires me. And they're like, that's a competition. You can't have those. And I was like, I said, I'm taking them to lunch on me. And they're like, doesn't matter, it's competition. Never had a write-up at that company, never been in trouble. Number 3. And at that point, I was like, yeah, just freaking walked out the door, called Michaela, because we had another kid on the way, and I was like, I don't know what I'm gonna fucking
do. Did that moment impact like how you viewed your own identity?
Yeah, no, like it was a little bit of an ego hit, but I was more pissed off because I legitimately, I'm literally doing the best I can to keep this company profitable. I'm keeping my people motivated. Like, we're not, what do you mean? Like, we're the 3rd highest producing people here and you're firing me over a fucking email? Like, you made me fire over 1,000 fucking people in the last year. You know, it was just the cog, right? The spit out machine. And I was just done. I told Michaela, I was like, I don't know what we're going to do. I don't know what I'm going to do for a living, but I'm never working for corporate America again. Fuck this shit. I'm going to work for myself. Started the emblem company.
I'm going to go to jail instead.
Yeah, I started that, and then I got a job driving semi-trucks at night. So I literally went and got a fucking CDL a week after I was fired.
You still have it?
Yeah,
I do
got
too.
The fucking CDL.
We should go get semis. We should go rent semis one day just for the fun of it.
Still got the CDL, and was doing food delivery at night for like Taco Bell, Arby's for this big company, and then during the day had my emblem business, started real estate, and was doing marketing for a chiropractic firm, helping them like generate leads and shit online. Did all that.
How many side jobs did you have to have when you were a youth pastor?
However many that you could start, because you could only have them for a couple weeks at a time.
Well, it's just, we talked
whatever,
about
offer 50 cents an hour more.
Right. You look at our generation, and you look at the whatever it fucking takes.
Yep. Yeah.
Right? You're feeding your family, you're having kids, and you're like, whatever it fucking takes. If I have to go, dude, we lost everything in 2008. I was fixing sprinklers, I was hiding my car, Wendy was waiting tables. These 2 little bastards were running around going, hey, what are we eating today?
Yeah.
And you're like, you just do whatever it takes.
Yeah.
And it's like in this generation today, it's the same conversation we have with Matt, right? Matt's talking about dealing drugs and the clubs and all the other things. It's like, where does that fit with what you're teaching your kids and your parental and like the whatever it takes with your agents? Like, you got to put in the time to get there.
Yeah, I think just a lot of people don't love the process. Like, looking back at it, like, it sucked. Like, all those times I look back, I'm like, oh man, I'm glad I pushed through that. You know what I mean? But at the same time, like, I'm glad it all happened too, because like I learned so much through like all of it. You know, like, had I not got fired, I wouldn't be here today.
Right. That was the blessing, right?
Who the hell would ever walk away from a corporate job making 6 figures with all the benefits and shit like that? You know what I mean? Like, something that you were progressing so fast.
So how many people are stuck in that rut?
Still, I just had a conversation the other day with a lady who's at the same damn company. It's 20 years now.
Because they're comfortable and they don't know what's on the other side.
They don't know what's on the other side. And I can't say, I always think I probably would have had some little side stuff going on because I like had that entrepreneurial like side stuff. Like I like doing that.
Right.
But like, dude, it's like, yeah, like that, at that point I was like, this has got to be the worst thing that could possibly happen. I got 2 kids, just lost a $100K a year job, just found out we're having our youngest, and right after that. And yeah, I'm like, fuck, now I'm gonna work fucking nights. Like, this is horrible, driving trucks at night. Like, I was not sleeping, not seeing my family. Went from like a cush job to that. But I was like, I was making this much, so now it's gonna take me 3 jobs to make even somewhat close to the same. And if that's what it takes, that's what it takes. I'm gonna make sure our quality of life doesn't fucking drop, even though I have to work myself into the ground. And so like, then I took on real estate, and I was still doing those 3 things. Like, go with CDL driving first, because like, this ain't gonna work. And kept the marketing, kept the e-com, kept doing the real estate, and I kept those going even in 3 years into my career, like, because I was afraid to let them go.
You mentioned your dad was a hard worker too, like that. So you feel like that was instilled in you from the beginning?
Yeah, that guy was a freaking grinder, man. He was one of the hardest dudes. I just talked. He was literally at my house a week ago, staying here, and I told him the best thing he ever did for me is teach me how to work. That was it, because he like looked around, he sees my house, and he's like, what the fuck? Like, he was just like, he showed up. I remember I brought him here. He hadn't seen it yet. And I brought him here, and he was just sitting out in the front yard. I was like, where's my dad? It was like 8 o'clock at night, and he was just sitting in front of the street, just like looking, smoking a cigarette. He's like, this is just, he goes, I couldn't even imagine this. This is crazy. And I was like, best thing you ever did is taught me how to work. But yeah, I remember being a kid, 10, 11, 12 years old. Have this old green 94 GMC diesel, old 6.5 liter,
Jeez.
rattly,
Noisy,
no AC,
gross, smelled like shit
no
all
AC,
the time.
yeah, dually green. That was his work truck, and I remember it start up, and I remember being a kid, and I'd sit up in bed. It was every morning at 3:30, which I get up at 3:30, ironically still. But I'd sit up and look out the window, and you just see this like cigarette cherry in his mouth as he's like loading up all his tools and shit and go to work, and I wouldn't see him come back till 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night. That was all I remember. I mean, not all I remember of him, but like that's like one of those memories that's like ingrained in my head is that fucking cigarette cherry every morning.
It's funny because my version of my dad was every house that we lived in when I grew up, his office was on the patio so he could smoke.
Yep.
But my dad would be out there from freaking 4 a.m. until midnight, and during the winter he had little space heaters out there in his jacket.
Yeah.
But when I was telling about the minimalist desk, my dad would always have the 8-foot desk because real estate back then, dude, it was faxes and papers and shit everywhere. Yep. I have an interesting question though for you.
Uh-oh.
Because there's guys like Blake and I where we're driven, like talk about contentment, building the next thing.
Yeah.
But you have a different contentment. Because there's not this build process, and I don't think it's right or wrong, but...
Well, it's interesting, right? Because I feel like we're the generation where our parents all worked like crazy, and there also used to be pensions and different things for a lot of people. So they would work a job they hate for 35 years just
to get to 65 and go, okay, I'm done. I put in my time. I made it.
But it's like, coincidentally, we're also the same generation that probably the highest majority that probably needs counseling that doesn't receive counseling. So there's got to be something to say about that at the same time. Like it's just the latchkey curse of being like, oh, we have this freedom, we have all this stuff. Yeah, your parents do love you, I think. Like, it's that balance. And so I think for me, like I was also very much raised that way of like, I would see my parents the same time. You know, my dad would get home relatively early. My mom would get home in the middle of the night. And it was that way forever. She'd put us on the school bus and then you'd see her at night. And so I think for me, especially like why my kids are 8 and 10 right now, it's like this whole season of life for me is, and like I said, I was a youth pastor for 20 years. So I feel like I've helped raise a lot of other people's kids, and I waited my whole life to be a dad. Sure. And so for me, I care way more about this season that I'm never going to get back. That's development, that's being at every game or competition or any of those things. And
how do you balance that though? From like, okay, you wanted to be the parent, but then you want to build, and you want to do those things, right? Like,
not well, I'd say. You know, I have definitely promised myself that I will err on the side of my family every time, which makes it tough for me to balance, right? Because there's a large catalyst of me coming out to Arizona and exiting when we did. And so going, I don't have a plan to exit the workforce. I don't have a great retirement plan.
Sure, yep.
I don't have, so it's like, all right, I have these next couple decades to grind and try to figure it out and make it happen. And every time that teeter starts to go one way or the other, I definitely lean towards my family every time, knowing my window may get shorter, but this one I'll never get back. Yeah. If I have to work longer in life, I'm gladly willing to do that. Yeah. So I don't know. I think that's how I navigate it. Whether it's correct or not, I have no idea. But
no, there is no right or wrong. That's the thing is like, if there's one thing I learned, it's like, dude, I've gotten just so much criticism for working as much as I did, right? And I don't know if there's a right or wrong answer to it. Like, I think to you on the opposite side, I did miss a lot of shit with my kids. Like, it sucked, you know, I worked a friggin' lot, but my mission was also like, we came, like we ended up here. I had a little brother that like passed away and we were in Vegas, right? So I saw my dad like lose everything. We lost our house. That's how we ended up in Arizona. We were freaking homeless when we came here because we lost everything, right? So like, I remember doing that as a kid and like looking back, I'm like, I had a horrible, no, it wasn't bad, but like I've dedicated my entire life at this point to get my bloodline so far away because nobody in my family tree, none of them have ever achieved anything close to what I have, right? Like this is so out of the realm of it, like take anybody in my grandma's been pretty successful running a business. My dad's always been a hard worker, but never financially was able to like get to this, right? It's not that he didn't put in the hours, it was just the activity and the financial literacy wasn't there.
Right.
And so once I started getting a taste of it and stuff like that, it's just, there's no right or wrong answer, man. I mean, I envy the dudes that they're in their 20s and they just freaking hit it right and started some tech company, made a few $100 million, and they're like, yeah, I got all the time in the world in my 30s, spend time with my kids. The cards weren't dealt for me, right? They just weren't fucking dealt. on the opposite side of that, yeah, there's always that balance of regret. It's like, I don't have regret for getting what I did, because the amount of lives that I changed with like helping people, doing this, getting to where it's at. Like my kids will have the same thought. He worked hard. Now, will they criticize me if like he wasn't there enough for this? I don't know. But there's other opportunities that are created for them now that like they'll never have to live a life that I did growing up. You know?
Do you worry about that all with your kids, going from
the
one
value of
extreme to the
money
next?
with them is fucking nothing.
Well, you know, it's interesting though, talking about the younger generation, though, how do you ensure that you don't contribute to making the next weak link by a handout?
I don't know if I necessarily, you just have to be honest with them, right? Like it's not like I look at my kids, I'm like, oh, I wish you had to go through the shit I had to go through. No, I don't. Like, no, I don't. I don't wish you ever to see half the shit I saw when I was young and have to, you know, it's the reason why I do what I do. You know what I mean? But having very real conversations with them, right? Like, hey, this is what it was like. This is what it looks like. This is how I got here. This is how that person got there. This is what they did, right? Like everybody just has their own friggin' path, right? I know people that spend all the time with their kids and they look at me and they're like, dude, I wish I had all that shit. And I know dudes that have all the shit and they're like, I wish I had that. Everybody's always wishing they have what they don't have.
Back to the comparison game.
Yeah, and I don't think there ever is like a balanced side of that. You know what I mean? So like I could just tell you, like there's just seasons of like extreme imbalance for me. Where luckily I'm in a season now where like I hired a business coach earlier this year and he's like, I'm going to teach you how to make the most money you ever made and work the least. And I'm like, bullshit, dude. He's right. Like best year, I pull back. I'm usually home every day by 4 o'clock. I'm no longer in the office till 7 o'clock. I don't have to work weekends as much as So I'm going to try. He's like, he forced me. He's like, this year you're traveling. You're not passing up a damn opportunity to go through. And I hate traveling, right? So I'm spending more time. But none of that, like the vacations my kids were able to take, the opportunities to have, the sports, the traveling, none of that would be possible if I didn't sacrifice on the front end because the cards I was dealt didn't give me. It's not like I came from a parent who was like, yeah, here you go, here's the money, you go take your time. Like I had to create that to get here. Yeah. You know what I mean? So I don't know if there's a right or wrong answer. I try not to dwell on it too much. I just do the best I can.
Yeah, and that's something you have, I feel like, even challenged me with the other week, right? Of being like, grinding a little more would help you be able to create more moments and memories, right? Like it's.
But I think as you go through it, you know, I always love the term, right? There's a rhythm with kids, right? Yep. When they're at different ages, they need you in different capacities. And as long as you're going through that with them and realizing like, hey, there's different rhythm right here, right? I need to be around a little bit more or less a little bit more, whatever that works, rather than just, it's always the same thing, right? And probably a lot like your dad, even though my dad was in real estate, everything was about work. And part of it is because it really had nothing to do with the amount of work. It had to do with, it's not even ego.
Well, it's probably purpose. Part of it. That's all he knows.
It's more of the, I take it very similar to me, right? Like when I was struggling with the alcohol and things, like not wanting to talk to somebody about it. Yep. But yet I watched my parents struggle financially for so many years. Yep. But they were so embarrassed about where things were that they wouldn't go and seek out and go, help me get here. Yep. Do you think that that's a big difference in your life? And I mean, even in both of us, right? I've just learned from my dad to do something that he wouldn't do, which is I'm going to go learn from somebody else that's fucking smarter than me. Yeah. So that I can have a different rhythm in this. Yeah, like I'd say the rhythm I'm in right now is driven by just pure enjoyment of it, right? See, the problem with me is I enjoy working. That's the hard part. Like I went through a phase where I was like, I'm going to slow it way down. I had my couple previous house mortgage was dirt cheap, sold a lot of nice cars. Like I was probably could have damn near close to retired, like if I really wanted to at that point. And I was hands down the most miserable I ever was. And so what I found out and what I discovered about myself was like, I'm obviously like, I enjoy working, creating, building, being busy. My dad's the same freaking way. My dad was here and he literally went home 4 days early because he said he was bored out of his mind because he had nothing to do around my house because I had landscapers and cleaners and shit. And he's like, I got nothing to do. Nothing. I have no purpose here. That's what he was telling me. You should have sent it to my house. I got a list of shit you could have done. You're not here to do anything. You're here to chill, like hang out, go watch TV, go like. But I just laugh because I'm the same way. Like you got to have purpose, right? But then the other side of that is like I had to shut the noise out because the internet's like really good at telling you how you should feel and how you should do it. Right? Like, oh, you're a horrible paying for work. Oh, you're bad if you're not. Oh, you're too lazy. You're like, and I'm like, holy shit. And I shut it out. Like I stopped listening to it. And I really got in tune with myself, especially like earlier this year.
again, with the help of like one of my business coaches, but he's like, dude, write on a piece of paper right now, like what makes you, whatever it is, right? Hanging out with kids, working makes you feel good, buying a new fucking car, buying whatever, do all these things, like, do these, I'm like, yeah, they make you happy. He's like, how many of those things do other people tell you not to make happy? Like 90% of them. And he's like, how much do you care about what people said? I'm like, kind of a lot. He's like, okay, so all the things you want, people are telling you shouldn't want, and you care about their opinion, and you're like this. And I'm like, yeah. He's like, why do you care what they think? I was like, I don't know. He's like, then fuck them. Like, and I was like, you're right. And it's like this year I let him go, and I was like, yeah, I like buying a nice car. I like having, like, I didn't have any of that shit when I was a kid. It makes me happy. I enjoy driving it. I care less about showing it to people. It's just genuinely makes me happy.
Well, it goes back to that content thing. Like all the things that you have are not for anybody else.
No,
and I think that's where the difference when you start building is, are you truly building out of joy for you, or are you building for ego?
Sure.
And that was one of the things I had to deal with in rehab was like, I realized my identity was so soaked up in what I did and what I had rather than who I was.
Sure, absolutely.
It's one of the craziest internet anomalies is caring so much about the opinions of people that you would never even take life advice from.
No, that's like, dude, you literally hit it right on the nose. Cause like what's crazy about it too, by the way, is the people that I admire and look up to that like often doing more than me are never the ones that ever criticize me. Like if I were to break that down a step further, it's literally like the people that have hardly anything that I hear all the time complain about having nothing and being stressed about money. They're looking me in the face like, you gotta spend more time with your kids to be as miserable as you. Like, I don't have a right or wrong answer, but I definitely don't want to live the way you do, you know, and you're right on the nose. And that just breaks down the dichotomy of like, you just have to truly follow what the hell makes you happy. Like, we've got a good friend, Brian. I laugh all the time because he doesn't give two shits about anything financial. You probably agree, you know, like, what is he driving, like a 2018 4Runner?
Yeah.
Some shit. Like we're pulling up to these steakhouses, Lambos and shit, and he's in his 4Runner, happy as fuck, right? And you're like,
he probably just came back from a shroom journey.
yeah, dude, you know what I mean? But like, he's one of the most successful people I know too. But like, he's a great example of somebody like, and we often talk about that all the time. There's probably a good yin to yang to that because he tells me, he's like, dude, you kind of like inspired me to want some nice shit here and there. Because he's got his own reasons for not wanting that and telling himself he doesn't need it. And he inspires me to be like, it's really not that, like sometimes when I get in a season of like, it is important to have these things, like, no, it's not. He's just, you know, like, but dude, like there's proof like in our circle, like we all value such different friggin' things and we're all happy. And like the neighborhood I live in, everybody here is, luckily I'm fortunate, like a lot of people in here are very successful, small business owners. It's just, you start to, again, maturity, right? Yeah. Tell me in 20, I wouldn't have paid attention to you as I gotten older and I learned the game. Everybody just loves their own friggin' shit, dude. I got people that walk in here like, what a waste of money. This is crazy. You're an idiot. And you got other people like, this is incredible. Wow. You know, it's just like, everybody just has their opinion, man. Like, you got to do what you, and as soon as you start living for other people, that's when I was literally like, the other people's opinions make me the most miserable. I literally said, I don't fucking care what anybody thinks. This is like, the only people I care about is obviously my wife, my close friends. Yeah. And even then, if they're like, your cars are stupid, I don't care. But character-wise, I do care very much about that.
So that's a huge lesson. It's a huge parenting lesson as well, right? Because then you go, that's a huge core value.
Dude, like my daughter gives two shits about nice cars. Doesn't care. Yeah. My youngest daughter, I picked her up in my Lamborghini the other day, and she calls me. I'm sitting out front way, and she's like, can you go around back? I said, fucking why? What are you talking about? She's like, Dad, go around back. She's on the phone. I'm like, what are you talking about? I don't want people to see me getting picked up in that thing. That's embarrassing. Go around back. I'm like, you're like, do you know how much dude, my mom and dad picked me up in a friggin' 64 Suburban that was halfway primered and no fucking air conditioning. And my mom drove through the fence because the brakes went out. That's embarrassing. Like, what? Like, one kid cares about nothing. My son's like all about it, right? Like, and so you even learn through your own kids. You're like, they're so friggin', they all care about such different things. And then as a parent, that's the best lesson you can teach is like, what, are you going to make your kid feel bad for not wanting something? You're like, no, like, all right, I support you in this. I support you in this. I support you in that. I'll pick you up in my shittiest car. If you're embarrassed, that's fine. Like, whatever, you know?
How do you navigate that? Like, what are some of the main core values you hope to instill into your kids before they leave your home?
Yeah, so like the biggest thing with them is like, just, you know, number one, like go after what you want, give it everything. Like the biggest thing we tell them is if you're not going to give it your solid effort, don't do it. Like whatever that is, you know what I mean? I tell them the same thing, like be yourselves, be who you guys want to be. I've given them a little more grace. I was probably definitely, I would say 5-10 years ago, a little more strict and disciplined. That is the one thing my parents were with me. They were very like, be you. It was super interesting because I had parents that were like, smoked pot in the freaking car, did whatever, like very financially illiterate, like most irresponsible, quote unquote, ride in the back of the pickup truck, which was a flatbed and had no sides, down the fucking freeway, drink out whatever garden hose you want. just, we don't give a shit if you're out riding your dirt bike all day, just come home. And it's like those parents to like, oh, by the way, if you disrespect your mom, I'm going to whoop your ass. If you get a bad grade, I'm going to whoop your, it's like, it was such extremes of like, we don't care about anything but these things. And I found myself being the same way. I'm like, you better get your grades up, da, 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 da. And I'm like, I just caught myself. I'm like, man, they're doing the best they can. Spend time with them, talk to them, and so just, I don't know, show them more compassion to them has been a huge one for me too. But ultimately, it's just be truthful. If you need help, come ask for help. Don't just hide shit from me. Like if you genuinely like need help with something, and give it your all. It's all I ask. Like I'm not like my daughter, she had struggled in math. I'm like, get an A, and she's like sobbing, like trying to like, okay, if you're giving it your all, that's what I care about genuinely, And once I gave them that grace, it's crazy. Like they were like, now we have like one of the best relationships ever. That's awesome. That was my fault. I just wasn't giving them enough grace to some of that stuff. Yeah.
But was part of that just the way you were conditioned as a kid? Like these were the things, and everybody else's opinion. Like your kids should get good grades. You're like,
it was just so much of like trying to get them to see value in what I was doing and why I was doing. And like, I want you guys to follow my footsteps, do this the way I did. You don't want to live that way and stuff, like the way I grew up. Like you guys don't understand how good you have it and stuff. So it was me almost like trying to force a square peg in a round hole. And then I had to really reel myself back in. I'm like, they'll never understand it. And honestly, I don't want them to understand that. So why am I holding them accountable to the same shit that I did? Like, they just live a completely different life than I ever did. And by the way, that was the purpose. You create more opportunity. You didn't want them to live that way. And now you're holding them accountable the same way so I had to like be honest with myself.
It's a good realization.
Yeah, 100%, So I still instill some of it. Like I said, like again, if you half-ass it, I'm going to make you do it again, Like if you talk back, you do this, you're freaking grounded for the weekend, you lose your shit. Like my son went a whole friggin' summer with no electronics, which I thought that was fine. I was like, you should be lucky. You don't know how.
We just take tires off of cars and things like that, put things up on blocks.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So it's been good though, but it really helped our relationship for sure when they're kind of just.
Now, how old are your kids?
My daughter's actually going to be 17 next week. Son's going to he's 15. He'll be 16 in February, and Kennedy's 10 right now. So yeah, 10, 15.
Got a ways
16.
to go.
Yeah.
And they're never moving out of here.
They're what?
They're never moving out of here.
He said, what?
My 16-year-old swears she is. And she's it's the same thing with her. What's interesting is like she doesn't care about anything nice either. My oldest one. She's just doesn't care about the name brand stuff. She's like, I'm going to go to school to be a cosmetologist. I don't care about this. I don't care about money. I'm like, you're going to have a hard time adapting to life coming from here to that. She's like, no, I don't care. She's like such a simpleton with that stuff, which is amazing. I'm kind of glad because I worried about that. I'm like, God, my kids are going to expect this. They don't. My son's coming around right now because as he's getting ready to drive, he wants like a nice car. And I'm like, good luck, dude. He wants, better start learning how to make some money.
Right.
But he's freaking smart. That's the crazy thing about it is like, he's smarter than I am. The other day, he's like, yeah, I'm sports betting. I'm like, what, dude? No, what are you, you're an idiot. Flips his phone around. He's like, $500. I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, you just got to know who to bet on. It's a numbers game. Then he breaks the whole thing down, and he's friggin' winning. And I'm like, well.
Does he manage accounts for anyone?
Yeah.
It's almost like Chase during COVID. I mean, the kid never went to high school, so it was all online. He's like, yeah, look, I'm using AI. I'm like, cool. Dude, he's so, like, knock yourself out.
Yeah, dude.
Get it done.
Yeah, he calls me the other day. He's like, I need you to give me a ride to Walmart. And I'm like, why? He's like, I sold a camera. I'm like, and why'd I gotta go to Walmart? He's like, because I don't have it yet. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, well, I saw this camera on sale at Walmart when I was at Mom's house. I took a picture and put it on eBay, and I sold it for $300. And they have it on sale at Walmart for $1 or $180. So I need to go buy it. I'm like, what? He's like, well, I already sold it. I have the money in my PayPal. I'm like, what? So it's like he's figuring it out, you know what I mean? And I can't be mad at that. Yeah.
No, you can't. I mean, that's the fun part about watching them grow up when they get to those ages. Like you're like, oh, if I just like sit back and watch and give a little bit of guidance.
Yep.
But they become their own people,
yeah.
right? And
he's money motivated, so I'm like, all right, well, I'll teach you what you need to focus on if that's what you are. And my other daughter's, she's not motivated by that, and the youngest is trying to be like a TikTok star right now. So. Dude, it's the craziest thing because like there's girls here in the neighborhood that are like they have like 8 million followers on YouTube right now. That's they're like I think 10. They're like super well known. I'm not going to name them on this thing, but they're over here at my house hanging out. I had to take them to Target the other day because my daughter's like, let's go to Target, get mom a gift basket. So I have like these 2 little TikTok stars with my daughter, and they're all hanging out. And then they like FaceTime this other family in Utah. It's a really big family, but they're like super famous. They have like 10 million followers on YouTube, and I'm like, what is going on right now? My 10-year-old's on FaceTime, and I'm shopping with these two super famous TikTok stars that are 10 years old.
And my kids are going to watch your kids open those toys on YouTube. Great.
And then they're out here doing like a dance and stuff, and then I hop in there and dance, and then they throw me on YouTube and shit. I'm like, what world am I living in? This is so crazy. Like, I would have never pictured this when I was a kid. It's insane, you know? So,
Isn't it fun to embrace it though?
oh, it's just wild. It's everything I wanted, because I wanted to create opportunity for them, right? Like, when I was a kid, like, dude, you know the same thing? Like, what the hell? If you would have told us when we were 10 years old, by the way, you're going to make millions of dollars on the internet dancing, I'm like, what? What's the internet? You know, and MS-DOS. I'm like, what's the internet, right? And like, it's so wild to see it, you know what I mean? Yeah, so it's been fun. It's cool. So,
If you got to pick 4 or 5 words that would describe who your kids would grow to become,
yeah.
what would that be?
Successful, purposeful, happy. And I'd say, you know, probably always hungry, like, and hungry as a whole, just for life. Like, that's the thing. I always want them to just continue to want more, grow, you know what I mean? Never be quote unquote satisfied, because, like, you know, again, like, it comes back to the content thing, you know, like, that's all posts pop up from my social media from 2011 on Facebook and my memories the other day.
Those are so fun.
I'd just be, what did it say? It said, I'd be so happy if I could just make $100,000. That's what it said in 2011. And I was like, I feel like a fucking failure if I just made $100,000 these days. You know what I mean?
Well, Grant Cardone says you're a loser if you can't make $400,000.
Right, yeah, in an hour, yeah. So, like, but, like, I looked at that, but I'm like, man, at one time that was the goal, and at one time this was the goal, and at one time this was the goal, and then, like, looking back, it's not like the money, the things, it's the fact that I was able to, like, the road has been so long, which has been good, right? It's not a short road. It's I came from here all the way to here, and I've got to experience everything that's came in between that, from, like, super hard shit to really cool shit to being in rooms with people where you're like, holy shit, to making, you know, more money in a year than you ever thought you'd make in your entire lifetime combined worth of work, you know, like, just opposite sides of a spectrum. It's been an amazing ride. So, like, for them, I hope the same thing, right? It's if I had to say, just stay hungry, stay, you know, want the whole thing for it.
I love that, man. Hungry for life. I call it thrive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know. It's I could just tell you as I turned 40, all the shit they tell you in your 20s that you're like, that's so stupid. It's like 100% freaking true. Stay hungry, enjoy the ride. And you're like, damn,
right.
You're all right.
Let's kind of wrap this up. You know, one of the interesting things after I came out of rehab was just thinking about foundation.
Yep.
Right? I felt like I lost my foundation. Things were crumbling. Like, what are the keys in you keeping your foundation strong through all the successes, through marriage, through all the things, like you and Michaela work together, like Wendy and I do, and marital problems are just gonna fucking happen.
Fuck, it is.
You know, I've been married 25 years. You've been what, 14, 15?
Yeah, 14.
Yeah. Right. So what's the foundational for you to keep stable?
You know, for me personally, I'm gonna go with the go-to, which is just communication. That's where we really fucking jack up all the time.
Sure.
If I just, like, the most common, like, F up with, and that's not just relationships, this is friendships, colleagues, work, communication. Like, people literally have something on their mind, and they will let it sit there, and they'll tell themselves something, and then it grows and it grows and it grows and it grows, and then, like, all of a sudden 2 months later it's this massive resentment that had it
the build up
just been talked about, like, hey, by the way, this is kind of bugging me a little bit. Like, what could we do to fix that? Right there would have saved 2 months of, like, agony, or, like, this massive blow up, or, like, this chain reaction of problems. So, like, communication is number one. Me personally, it's a gift and a curse. And other people may have this. I'm sure they do. I know I do. But when you have a personality that is addictive, and when I say addictive, I don't mean specifically drugs, alcohol, whatever. Addictive to constantly wanting more and, like, feeling fulfilled by more, right? So, like, what I mean by that is, like, I'm in sales. I enjoy the sales process. I enjoy the goal setting. I enjoy the, like, I can't have that. What do I got to do to get that, right? Like, that personality has served me so, like, I wouldn't be here today if I didn't have that personality, right? They're like, I got to have this. I got to have this. What's next? What's more? What's the next close? What's the next deal? What's the next? I've got this. How do I get this? That will also throw you 180 degrees in the other direction too, because it will destroy your fucking marriage. It will destroy everything, which almost happened to me many times because of an addictive personality that, like, got to have this, got to close this, got to get this next thing, right, in many different ways. So it's having the self-awareness to say, I have this amazing gift that if I harness it properly, it's going to exponentially explode my life over here. If I don't harness it and I let it run wild over here, it's going to fucking destroy and like light my world on fucking fire, right? So it's almost, I always look at it as like you're holding this thing in your hand that's, I don't know what they would call it, kryptonite, whatever the bullshit, right? Like whatever they call it.
Your balls.
Yeah, dude. But you have this thing where it's just like this personality trait of me is the best thing and the worst thing that could happen to me. And any friggin' time it's going to go this way and light your world on fire, or at any time it's going to make your life absolutely amazing. Like you're going to go so far down the fucking road because you're like, I got to do this. And that was like my realization. And sometimes you don't notice it. You're just like, why the fuck am I doing this? You're like, oh shit. Like it's not even the thing. It's the fact that like, I just wanted to like feel like I could get that, close that, do that, move on to the next. I'm just directing that energy to the wrong shit. And so,
what did it take you to be self-aware of that? Like
fucking almost losing my marriage, fucking friggin' just losing connection with a lot of friends, feeling very empty inside because it's like this crazy tug of war. We're like, I'm fucking wildly successful here and I'm failing like a motherfucker over here, right? So your net zero is right in the middle, right?
Yep.
Everybody looks at you and they're like, oh, you're so great, da da da. You're like, I'm fucking miserable inside because you're fighting with this discontentment of like, I know over here I'm really fucking up, and it's like you want to not fuck up and you don't, but it's like this thing that's like you're like it's so hard to friggin' explain, right? But once I identified it, I'm like, holy shit, dude. It's like because like once you fuck up over here, you're like, dude, like it doesn't feel good, but it's like in the moment you're like, I'm just trying to like close this thing. It's like this innate like what's next personality type thing, and like once I stood back, and that's the easiest way I could look at it. It's like I looked at this thing, I'm like, okay, like what do I do with this? Like it's this personality inside me that like has fucking done all these incredible things for me and served me in so many ways. And it's also the same thing that's almost destroying everything around me. Here's what you do. You just make sure it stays on this side of the fucking fence and you point it, you use it, right? You point that shit at the right things and you make sure that you do not let it go to the wrong things, and it's going to change your life in a great way.
And you have to be self-aware.
Yeah.
In that, right?
You have to admit it to yourself, right? Like that's, self-awareness is the easiest thing, and that's like such a cliche word, but it's like, hard part is nobody's going to tell you that, man. Like nobody's, like luckily we've got good friendships, and like you said, we've all called each other out. Like you've called me when you're in a pickle, I've called you, and you're, hey Blake, this is what you got to fucking do, dude, knock it off. Like, and same thing to you, and Brian and Carl, like that's one of the things that like values my friendship so much is that, but yeah, you yourself have to, like, I tell people all the time, it's not one thing or other. It's like, you just have to be tired of your own shit, dude. Like, there's going to be a point where you're like, I'm fucking tired of my own shit. But I've seen very, very close friends of mine, to your point, like one of my friends, unfortunately, a guy I went to high school with, fucking lost his life over this shit. Highly, highly, highly successful guy. Like, came from nothing. Just like we literally grew up in trailers 4 doors down from each other. Worked his way up to a massive contracting company making $1 million+ a year. Like, it was crazy to fucking having this thing that like over here looks successful, but behind the curtain fucking was doing like cocaine that got laced with fentanyl, and you never know it talking to this fucking guy, right? But it was like an escape, fucking died, left a wife and 2 kids behind. And I was like, that point, I was like literally sitting at his funeral, and I'm like, what the fuck? Like, it was a year ago, a little over a year ago. It was October of last year. But I remember sitting there as they like lowered him in the ground, and I'm like, I know this guy. Like, I just talked to him like 3 days before that happened. He called me up, and I was talking to him and had a great conversation. And he's like, I'm proud of you, man. Like, look how far we've come. Like, I had the text messages, crazy shit. And I'm like, what the fuck happened? Like, he fucked up one time. And I know he didn't know that was going to happen, right? But life over, done, lights out.
But was it one time, or was it just the one time that freaking...
He had started spiraling about like 6 or 7 months, 8 months before that.
What would you have said to him if you knew back then?
I didn't know he hit it. I would have told him to fucking stop. I would have like been like, let's fuck. Same conversation, right? Of like, what the fuck is going on with you? Like, what is causing you to do this? Because you're better than this. You know what I mean? It was like an escape, essentially, is what it was from whatever shit he was dealing with behind the scenes. You know what I mean? And it's like, it wasn't him. Like, dude's like, perfect profile, good dude, comes from like a hardworking, like very similar background to me. That's what I say. So I guess if I had to say as they were lowering him down, I'm like, there is so much commonality between him. That could be me just as easily as it could be him. You know what I mean? It's just luckily I picked a different direction than he did for the escape on that stuff. But that was the thing for me. It was like, man, like he was such an amazing person, and he had this one freaking thing that like got him out of control that took everything away, right? Like that one thing, you know, and that's why I looked at him like, it's this one thing. You have this great personality trait. served you here, but if you let this thing get out of control and you don't regulate it over here, it can take you out or take your family out. Take the things that you literally said you're building for. And so like that thing of him like getting lowered in the ground, I remember sitting there looking at it and I was like, that's it. Like that's really where things, that was about a year ago for me, where it started to kind of click for me and shit. And yeah, so.
I feel like there's like sometimes that realization that needs to happen of how blessed you really are when you go, the thing that almost took me out didn't take me out, it didn't kill me, and because of it was a catalyst for me to begin to normalize difficult conversation. Absolutely. Because once you have a strong friendship or a strong circle, you go, oh, we can talk about these things and I'm not so alone, I'm not so desperate.
I'm not judged.
Yeah, and I can recover, I can keep going.
The hard part is, it really is, you got to find the right people. Like there's a lot of shitbags out there, I'm just going to say.
I agree.
Like, there's a lot of people that would love to see you fail, and their end game is like, aha, you're down, I'm better than you, right? Like it is hard, and you're going to have to pull through the weeds, and you're going to have to find the right people, and you're going to have to be a little, vulnerable with some people. Like I said, I found a great group of people like that I can go to. But dude, it's literally right at the front of the conversation, just communication. You have to talk to people about that shit.
Yeah, and it's, the journey of this podcast, came from my rehab experience, and then just realizing like, I didn't feel there was anybody I could have the conversation. Like even as much as I know you and Brian, I talked to Brian before I went to rehab, but it was like, there wasn't a lot of people that I was willing to have that conversation with. And then coming out, it was like, man, more people need to have that space that they can reach out and go, I need somebody to pick me up before I fuck this up. Without worrying about it, right? I mean, that's the whole thing in AA is, the phone's 500 pounds, pick it up. Yeah. Problem is people pick it up too fucking late, right? They don't pick it up at the beginning. They pick it up when they're already freaking too gone to do anything about it.
Yeah. No, I agree with that 110%. Yeah.
As people are moving in their success, what advice would you give them when they come on those hard times, when they're getting ready to have to make a decision to rehab something or tear something or change a career? Like, what would that advice be in that?
I think the biggest thing is like, you have to have self-awareness. That's what it comes down to. Like, arrogance got in my way for the longest time, and we oftentimes will make excuses for ourselves more than anybody. Like, we are the best self-justify. I'm doing this because of this. This is why I'm doing this. This makes sense in my head. And again, that's just another thing I've learned after a while of like coaching people, where I would see people do shit and I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with this person? Like, really? You fucking think that's okay? Like, we see this shit all the time on the internet. You're like, why would you do that, right? But then you talk to people and they literally thought that was a good idea. Now, whether it was a good idea to have that as a good idea or not, whole other conversation. But it really does come down to like, you have to critique yourself. You have to be willing to have the hard conversations with yourself. You have to be self-aware enough, right? Like, you have to look at yourself and say something's fucked up, or at least look at things from other perspectives, right? And I'm going to bring it right back full circle to like maturity, but that's the fastest way freaking to it, is like, have conversations. And if you are not someone that is good at holding yourself accountable, the best thing you can do is put people around you that will hold you accountable, right? Like, there's a lot of people that are really good at what they do, but as soon as they get off track or they start spiraling out of control, if you have a good support system around you, it's like, no, dude, you're better than this. Don't do this shit. Not, like the parent is to the kid. It's like having guardrails in your freaking life. They can bounce you back into place, right? The hard part is people like me, maybe like you, I fucking hate guardrails. I hate people telling me what to do. I hate fucking I love figuring it out on my own. I love being free. Like, I love all those things, right? So for the longest time, I told myself, nobody's gonna tell me what to do. Look how far I came on my own. I figured this shit out on my own. And then what happens is like, you start off here and then you get 1 degree off, and then you go 10 miles down the road and you're freaking off 90 degrees.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Where if I would have just had some bumpers along the way, nope, get back, dude. Like, you can take that energy, you can be you, but you've got the right people around you, which is ironic because these days, how many people, like, I can tell you, like, from a coaching perspective, you're probably the same way. Hey, you're really fucking up here, by the way. Like, I care about you, but how many of them get offended by that and they just don't talk to you anymore over that? And you're like, I wouldn't be telling you this shit if I didn't care about you, And unfortunately, I try to really tell people, you'll see a lot of my messaging on Instagram and social media for people who follow me. I'm like, it's the people that give you the feedback that really do care about you the most. I'm not going out of my way to give you any feedback if I don't care about you. Like, you're not going to see me pick up a phone and call. If I'm calling you, hey, by the way, I think you're kind of fucking up. I think you should do something a little different here. That's because you're on my mind. I think about you and I'm trying to help you out.
You know, that's, it's really good wisdom. It's also something that people need to understand is like, dude, if you ask the question, be willing to receive
Absolutely
the answer. And, you know, I recently had this guy come in and I've watched him all over Inside Real, and I'm like, who is this guy? And he reached out, and it was a hard message for him to send to me. And he finally came in, and I was like, you know what? If I've changed through rehab, then I need to show change.
Sure.
So I sat him down, and I opened the question. I'm like, dude, who are you? Like, like, what is the deal? And went through all this stuff, and he's asking me for wisdom and advice, and I asked him really hard questions. And at the end of the day, I told him the things he should be doing, and then I watched. I'm like, this guy doesn't want it.
Not yet.
He's not willing to receive. He's not
there yet.
Like, you start seeing things, you're like, when I get to that though, I've realized like, man, I'm not going to let you in my life until I see.
So you're ready.
You start doing some of the things that we talk about. Otherwise, it's just like, don't waste my time if you truly aren't willing to receive it. As I was telling Jason earlier, I'm like, you know, one of the big things when I went to rehab was I went willingly. I was willing to receive that guidance and that piece of my life. And I see some of these guys are like, I kind of want it, but I don't.
Yeah, they haven't hit that rock bottom yet. That's what happened.
Yeah.
I think it's the realization too, like I just don't have time anymore to maintain shallow relationships in real life. You can go to my Facebook, you can go to my Instagram, and you can DM me once in a while if you want to touch base, but everything here needs to be in depth. I need depth, you know what I mean? And I want to provide depth.
Yeah, I mean, more surface level stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's 100% where it's at. The older I get, the more I like that.
Right. Well, you want to make better choices with people and who you spend your time with, and you only have so much time. And
like it got to me when I got busy. It was like work, family, right? And then oftentimes a lot of people were coming right in between that, where I should be spending more time over here. And then again, just after a while, you're like, damn, I'm wasting a lot of time with people that don't value my opinion or aren't taking. I'm trying to help these people and they're not, and then stand back and you're like, I'm taking time away from people I do care about to give to people that aren't ready to receive it. And then you as an adult, you have to make that choice. And, you know, a lot of people get mad at me for that. They invite me out places all the time. I'm like, something I don't care. I do. Ryan's the best at that. He teaches me. I'm not doing shit in November. Don't call me. By the way, I love you. Okay. Talk to you this summer. And I don't get offended by that, right? But we all we all need to be that way, right? But again, go back to 22-year-old me. I'm like, F this guy. He doesn't have time for me. Like, it's an ego thing, right? And it's just, again, as much as boundaries. You know,
the guy doesn't return my DMs.
Dude, all the time. Like, that's the worst. I get ditched from people all the time. And so it's like, like that's really what it comes down to, though, is just finding the right people around you, spending time with the right people that are trying to help you, you know. And for me, the busier I get, my time gets compressed, right? And it's work, which makes me money and I enjoy doing, and family, and that's it. And then in the middle, there's friends, you know, close colleagues, that people I care about. And you have to, saying no is the thing that's going to be the best thing that ever happened to you.
Yeah.
Saying no. So.
Well, thanks for the wisdom and
guys,
the years of friendship and just being super honest and vulnerable through this. I think that's the goal in this podcast, is just to show people like, hey, you know, the most successful people, they've all had rehab experiences. Doesn't mean you have to go where I went, but we've all had them.
Dude, and we live in a day where everyone only sees everybody else's highlight reels. It's just, so as much as we've talked about competition or comparison, any of those things, it's like let's just normalize real life and normalize difficult conversations and normalize the struggle is real.
Yep.
So,
the best thing you do is unfollow people that aren't serving you. Like, I don't know, like
or you don't like their opinion.
Dude, man. Like you're right, and that's the problem. It's the highlight reel. And the craziest thing is people will follow people that they don't like and watch their shit and get themselves fired up over stuff. And every day, I'm like, why are you doing this to yourself? Like, why are you triggering yourself every day? If this person's not helping you evolve, adding perspective to you, why are you watching their stuff? Because I got to that point where, like, my social media, you know, I follow 3,000 or 4,000 people and it's all conglomerate. And I'm like, I really only care about seeing probably like 20 people today, you know, like people that I care about, like genuinely, like I'm missing my family stuff to see this idiot over here, you know, lighting their head on fire and trying to put out the hammer on the internet. Like, so mute, you know, and it's crazy because now you get on social media and it's like, you can curate what you put into your head every day. And when people choose to put the shitty in their head every day for whatever reason, and then they wonder why 6 months later they have all these negative thoughts and these intrusive thoughts, and they create these fake beefs with people and stuff. And it's like, what are you talking about, man? Like,
I need the memes.
Happens all the
Can I
time.
tell you that from my perspective that I have the best friendship circle because I'm right in between Buddha
Yep.
and the guy with all the nice cars. And I'm like, I got a little bit of both. Like, I want to do a little bit of Buddha and I want to have the nice cars. So I'm like right in between.
Yep.
It fits so well.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Blake. I appreciate you.
Appreciate you guys for having me. Thank you.
Absolutely.